personal injury cases and criminal defense law. Here is your host, Attorney Jason Carnell.
Hey folks, Attorney Jason Carnell here again with another episode of my video cast. I think this is probably going to be episode number 10. So if you've tuned into all 10 episodes, thank you very much. I hope to continue to provide you with relevant content, and hopefully you've enjoyed what you've seen thus far. Today what I'd like to talk a little bit about are concussions. Okay. A concussion is it's a head injury, and it's something that a lot of folks get from car accidents, and they don't even know it. There's a misunderstanding. There are actually probably two misunderstandings about concussions that I'd like to use this video to clear up. Number one is that you actually have to hit something to have a concussion. That's absolutely not true. I've had a neurologist testify in court before that a concussion is caused by rapid deceleration of the head. Okay? Now, that can come as a consequence of impacting an object, impacting something inside the vehicle, or it can come literally just from the rapid deceleration of your head. And a good example of rapid deceleration is when you're in a car accident. Usually your car comes to a very, very abrupt stop, or in the case of a rear-end collision, your car is very, very abruptly propelled forward, okay, and you are very, very abruptly propelled backward in your seat, hitting your head on your headrest, okay? And these are the rapid deceleration forces that the neurologist that I referred to was talking about. So that's the first misunderstanding about concussions. You do not need to impact anything to have a concussion, okay? And then the second misunderstanding regarding concussions is that it's something that is going to show up on a scan. That is not true. So you most commonly see this issue when someone reports to the emergency room after a car accident, and they claim that either their head or their face hit the steering wheel or it hit the airbag. So the ER does a CT scan of the person's head, and the CT scan comes back normal. And so the misunderstanding here is that, well, it was a normal CT scan, so that must mean there was no concussion, and that's not true. Okay, first off, the purpose of the CT scan was not to see whether or not you had a concussion, but it was to see whether or not you had a brain hemorrhage or a fracture of any kind. That's the purpose of the CT scan, not to determine whether or not you have a concussion. So a concussion is not something that is necessarily going to show up on a CT scan. Now, if your CT scan does show an acute injury, such as a fracture or a hemorrhage of some kind, then yeah, you probably have a concussion as well. But just because the CT scan does not show that does not mean that you don't have a concussion. So again, referring to the neurologist that I've had testify in court before, a concussion is a clinical diagnosis. Okay, it is a clinical diagnosis. That means that a CT scan is not how you diagnose a concussion. You diagnose a concussion through reviewing the patient's history, finding out what their symptoms are, and then running certain neurological tests there in the doctor's office. Okay, this is how you diagnose someone with a concussion. Some of the symptoms of a concussion can be headaches, memory loss, slurred speech, forgetfulness, a loss for words, where a person is, they're literally like struggling to find words. They just, normally they would be perfectly fine in conversation and would not have this type of problem, but all of a sudden they cannot find the words to describe something that they're thinking of. Confusion. sleeplessness, where they're having trouble sleeping, strange dreams. That can actually be another sign or symptom of a concussion. So the important thing to remember here, folks, is just because if you went to the hospital, number one, if you went to the hospital, you had a CT scan, and that CT scan came back as normal, that does not mean that you do not have a concussion. And if you are experiencing any strange symptoms, and especially headaches, migraine headaches are a really, really big one. But if you're experiencing any strange symptoms regarding your mental acuity, your ability to focus, following a collision, you may very well have a concussion. And it would be a very, very good idea for you to follow up with a specialist, okay, for you to go see a neurologist or a concussion specialist. There are many of them around town. If you need a referral, I can certainly refer you to one. But most importantly, if you've been in a collision and you're experiencing any of these symptoms and you believe you might have a concussion, it would be a very, very good idea for you to consult with an attorney. Remember that consultations with my office are always free. My telephone number is 770-322-4990, or you can visit my website at www.carnellfirm.com. Again, thank you for tuning in to another episode, and I hope to hear from you soon.
Thank you for tuning in for another episode. If you found this video helpful, please like and share it. If you have questions, remember, consultations are always free. Just call attorney Jason Carnell at 770-322-4990, or you can visit our website at www.carnellfirm.com.